mean to interrupt. I know you guys are doing some great networking here. Me and your next co-founders and all. Just want to say thank you all for coming out. My name is Douloumbas. I'm one of the co-founders of Entre. We're a social network for entrepreneurs. We put on these monthly events to help you connect with like-minded entrepreneurs, investors, freelancers, artists, innovators, to help get your ideas off the ground or get your business to the next level. This is where it all happens. And we thank you guys for coming out. Next week we have our No Code Summit at Microsoft. If you don't know how to code and you're scared of coding, it's a great event to come to because there's actually platforms where you don't have to code and you can build a great app. But before we go into this interview, I just want to introduce our sponsor and partner, Daniel Vera from Spaces.
How's everybody doing tonight? Welcome to Spaces at the Chrysler Building. So we've been here at the Chrysler Building since July. This is our flagship location in New York City. It's a great building to be in. It's an Art Deco masterpiece that we were lucky to get here. We have 3 floors here. You guys have free day passes to use. Next time you want to come in and just have a place to work, feel free to use them at any of our locations in New York or even worldwide. So we have 300 locations worldwide. We're opening up our 100th location in the US in Raleigh, North Carolina later this year, which is fantastic. So you can get anything from a membership to an office. We do a lot of business with Entre. They're a fantastic organization to be with, so you guys are going to get a lot of value out of this. So if you guys have any questions or want to just talk about office space, I'll be walking around. Feel free to talk to myself or my colleague. We're here for you guys for anything you need. Thank you very much and enjoy the show. Thanks, Jimmy.
Thank you, Dane. Just full disclosure, our office is actually in this building, so this is awesome. So let's move into the interview. We have...
Nice to meet you.
Who's this?
Richard Lorenzen.
Mr. Lorenzen, come on. All right, great. If you can't hear us in the back, just let us know. We'll talk a little louder. So we're here today having this interview. Why do we do these interviews? Because we want to hear stories from successful entrepreneurs from New York or from other cities that we host events at. So Richard, your company is Fifth Avenue Brands.
Yep.
What is Fifth Avenue Brands?
So Fifth Avenue Brands is a public relations firm, and we specialize in doing media relations for B2B companies. We do a lot of work in the financial space. We work with hedge funds, private equity firms. We do a lot of policy work, and we work with a lot of B2B technology companies as well. Okay.
So here you are. You have this cup. Can you hear us?
I can't hear anything.
You can't hear us? Okay, we'll talk a little louder toward you. Can you hear me now? You in the back? What's that?
The acoustics really are muffled here. There's
Oh,
also a lot of seats in the front.
Yeah, we have about 7 seats in the front if anybody wants to come up. Okay. So, why'd you become an entrepreneur?
To make money. I started my company when I was still in school. I was still in high school, so I was really young when I started. And honestly, at first, I really was just looking for a way to make more money. And I was really interested in the internet. I was interested in computers. So I started thinking about how I might be able to use that to build a business that wasn't shoveling snow or selling lemonade or all those different things that I'd already done. So I started teaching myself how to code at 15 years old. I learned how to code. I learned how to do search engine optimization, content marketing. Keep in mind this was very early on when digital marketing was still very new. But I started selling that as a service to small businesses locally, and that kind of morphed into a marketing agency, which evolved into the PR agency that we are today. My mom was a reporter, so I grew up around newsrooms, around journalists, so I kind of understood the business, and I realized after a while that rather than being a full-scale, a full-service marketing agency, we could do a lot better for our clients and better for ourselves if we specialize in one thing, become the best at that one thing. And that's how we became a PR agency, probably when I was about 18 or 19. And so I'm 27 now, so it's been a good run.
Have you ever heard of the book One Thing?
One Thing, yeah, Gary Keller.
Has anybody heard of this book? Gary Keller's book, One Thing? No, you should check it out. It talks about focusing on the one thing that will make you and your company grow. So your dad was a fireman.
My dad, my dad was a fireman.
So your mom's a journalist, your dad's a fireman.
Yep.
Both put out fires.
Yep.
Right.
Pretty much.
I mean, you got into marketing. Like, I understand why. Like, I can understand why. But like,
Yep.
why did you pick that? Like, you could have picked a couple other different avenues. Why'd you end up there? And why'd you start a company at 18 years old when everyone else that your age is going out having fun and just
Yep.
enjoying college?
Yeah. Well, it was a combination of interest. I was interested in marketing, and I was interested in technology and the internet and building websites. So as I learned to code, for example, or as I learned to do SEO, I discovered that I liked it and I enjoyed it. And then obviously the other factor that weighed into that was the fact that I could do it online, virtually. And being a teenager living at home in my parents' house, there wasn't a lot that I could do in terms of going out and meeting big corporate clients. But what I could do was pitch people by email, meet people through online networking. What was social media back then? It was very early, but it was very accessible. So the internet allowed me to kind of compete from where I was growing up on Long Island in my parents' house, getting clients all over the U.S. And I did enjoy doing it, is what I learned as I got more and more into it. But I had no idea when I first started that it was going to become. I wanted to build a company. I wanted to be successful, but I had no idea that it was going to be like this. That becomes this big thing 12 years later that I'm still doing.
So you're young. You go
Yeah.
out. You start reaching out to clients. What like?
It was slow.
Yeah,
It was slow.
It wasn't busy.
No, it wasn't. Believe it or not, it wasn't booming in the beginning. But I would use, online communities and forums. This was back even before LinkedIn, so that there were forums back then where a lot of small business owners would network, and I would join the forums and I would cultivate relationships with people and tell them, that I was an expert in internet marketing and I could sell you these services. I would email local companies and pitch them. I kind of learned how to write pitch letters from my mom because she was a journalist. And for anybody who's familiar with journalism, there's a lot of pitching involved in being a journalist. Journalists pitch their editors, they sell stories. So I learned how to pitch, and I started reaching out to businesses. It was very small in the beginning. I would find a local business who would pay me maybe $200 or $300 to build a website for them, or to do some kind of digital marketing to grow their traffic. 12 years ago, companies had no idea whether or not it made sense to really spend serious money doing this, but it was still kind of new. It was a new frontier. And as I did a good job for those clients, it started leading to referrals, and then the clients got bigger. When I was 16 years old, I closed a six-figure client completely virtually through the internet, never having met them in person.
How old are you? 16?
I was 16.
Did they know how old you were?
They didn't know.
They didn't know.
I was 16.
That's what.
And
You think they would have given the contract?
I thought it was probably like 30. Luckily, the founder of this company was also relatively young. He wasn't 16, but he was in his late 20s, starting this new company that ended up becoming a really successful consulting firm. And he took a shot on me, and with a very small order. And over time, as I did better and better for him, I scaled up what we were doing, and that became the launching pad to really begin building a real company, because I could reinvest that money into my own marketing, building a team, and also being able to watch him build his business was kind of like a remote mentor for me. That also, even more than the money that I made from it, was probably the best thing I got out of it. He's still a client to this day, and he was the best man at my wedding several years ago, and he's become a really good friend. So you never know where those relationships are going to lead.
Absolutely. And let's take a step back. You said something about pitching.
Yep.
Which is something that we do in entrepreneur industry.
Yep.
What does it take to pitch, and what is pitching? Like, how do you formulate a pitch?
Mm-hmm.
And what did you learn from your mom on how
Yep.
to pitch that?
Well, it needs to be short, and it needs to communicate the value right away in those first few sentences. So in journalism, we have a saying called "Don't bury the lead," which basically means don't wait until the third paragraph of your pitch to actually get to the point of what the meat is, what the hook is. So creating a pitch that's short, that has a hook right there in those first few sentences, and then using another paragraph or so to build credibility about yourself, what you're doing, the project, maybe some recognition that you've gotten through media, or maybe through some awards or an incubator program you might have been in, is the formula that we still use to this day when pitching. We pitch hundreds of companies to reporters every single day. Short pitch, start with a hook, and then build credibility around why you're the authority and why people should listen to you on it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So now you're full-scale PR company in tech, policy.
Yep.
Let's go into tech first, and then we'll
Okay.
go into policy after. How do you do PR tech, tech and PR, like
Yep.
PR and tech, I mean, actually?
Yep.
How do you do that? Like, why is it important?
Yep.
Do you work with apps? Like, have you worked with
We do.
others? Like, what companies are you working with, and how does
Yeah.
it work?
So we work in the B2B space, and we do work with a lot of SaaS, like B2B SaaS and software companies. What we've found works best if you're a software company or a tech company, or really any kind of company, if you want to build a story around what you're doing and get attention for it, there's three things that we look at, which is number one, the founder or the team behind it. What kind of journey did they have building this? What kind of obstacles did they overcome? The more that you can put a human face or really personalize what you're doing and what the mission is, the more compelling that story becomes. So a lot of times we'll have an interesting founder or a rising star in the company that we're able to build a story around, and that becomes something that is very interesting for the media, can also be interesting for investors. And then the second thing that we'll look at is how is your company impacting the market, or the, whether it's the environment, the world, the community, because nobody wants to read a sales pitch about the benefits and the features that your product does, but they do want to read about, and again, this kind of also humanizes what you're doing and your mission. They want to read about what you do, how it affects the community, what kind of impact are you having on the world. So the more compelling of a story that you can build around that, and especially if you can humanize it, that's another very compelling story that we found works really well with press. And then the third thing is, so you have the founder, you have how you're impacting the community, and then the third thing would be, a lot of times we'll build an interesting story around a specific case study, whether it's a client that you had or somebody that you impacted, if you're a nonprofit, somebody that you helped, a difference that you made, building a story around that, and again, really personalizing it, because that's what sells a story ultimately.
So we had an interview a couple weeks ago at Microsoft with an entrepreneur, and he explained that do not pitch your product based on value, what the value is.
Mm-hmm.
Like for $59 you can get this. Nobody cares.
Yep.
What they care is can they trust this product, and why should they trust this product? So does that line up with what you're saying?
I would agree with that 100%. Sales, pitching, it's all about cultivating trust. And you're generally not going to cultivate trust by being the lowest priced player in the game. That may work in some markets, maybe you're Walmart, I don't know. But for the most part, sales is about building trust, and you want to build a relationship. And the way that you do that is by, again, personalizing your messaging, and showing, the why behind your mission, and the difference that you want to make, rather than just trying to be the lowest cost supplier.
So have you gone into like a tech company, let's say, and you sit down, you go through this process, right?
Yep.
Have you ever had founders that were not seeing the same vision, or were seeing
Sure.
kind of slightly different viewpoints on what they were doing?
Sure. We've especially seen that in companies that have multiple founders, like 4 or more co-founders, which these companies do exist, believe it or not. It's very difficult when you have 4 or 5 partners who are all very strong personalities, and they all have a very specific vision for what they want the company to be. And sometimes you can even see that with 2 founders, 2 co-founders in a startup. So there needs to be a conversation around how can we build a coherent message and an identity and a mission that we both see eye to eye on, but there also has to be some compromise there in terms of what can we actually get done, and what can't we get done based on the resources that we have, the talent that we have, and why we started this thing in the first place.
So you work with a lot of entrepreneurs. What's your take on you're an entrepreneur yourself, but
Yeah.
did you work with them?
Yep.
What's your take on entrepreneurs? Like, what happens when you see them? What do you think about them? Like when you, not on a personal level, but like on a business level.
Yep. We work with founders across the spectrum of literally just started up last week to more than $1 billion in revenue, and the things that are consistent are founders, they're visionary. They tend to struggle with a lot of the operational aspects of the business, and as a company scales, they usually do better by bringing in a team and building people around them who can complement those weaknesses. But what do we look at when we want to work with the founder is we're looking for somebody who, more than anything, has a lot of focus and discipline that can stick to one mission for long enough to see it through. A lot of founders have shiny object syndrome, they call it, where today it's AI, tomorrow it could be Ethereum, and then it's going to be something else. It's very hard as a founder, as a visionary, to be able to say, well, I'm going to stick to this one thing for 5 years, if that's what it takes, or 10 years to make it work. When the inherent nature of being an entrepreneur is you look for opportunities and you see them everywhere. So that I would say more than anything has been an indicator for us when we go into a company where it's still an earlier stage company, the founder is very active, and figuring out, is this a company that's probably going to make it? We look at, what's the focus and the perseverance of the founder, and are they going to be able to see this across the finish line without iterating maybe a million different times that completely takes them onto a different course.
Why do you think the shiny object syndrome?
Mm-hmm.
Why do you think they do that? Like, is it like they're trying to find validation in what they're doing?
It's probably a combination of things. I think all founders are a little crazy.
That's not true.
It's not true at all. But it's the inherent personality of being a founder. Is you want to build things. Founders are not signing up to start a company to be a manager.
Yeah.
They want to build things. They're doing it because they see opportunities and they want to take advantage of those opportunities. And those same good qualities that enable people to go build companies also derail a lot of companies if you don't have the right team around you who can help you control some of those urges, I guess. Yeah.
So you're 12. How many years in? 12.
12 years.
12 years in.
Yep.
Have you ever had to fire a client?
Oh yeah, all the time.
Do you have a story that you can tell us about something?
Oh yeah. I probably shouldn't tell us specifics. Is this on camera?
You can use like XYZ.
So it's the same as any service business. You're going to have clients who, number one, you're going to have clients that are just difficult. For whatever reason, there's not a personality fit, and that can be toxic to a company, especially in the beginning. If you have a client who's treating your team like crap, no matter how much they're paying you, there's going to be a point where you have to weigh those pros and cons and figure out, is this a client that's good for the long-term health of my company? And if you have a client who's bad for the mental health of your employees, which we've had, you need to make a decision and say, is this worth potentially hurting the team, losing employees that could be very good players on our team, or is it going to be easier for us to go out and get a new client? And a lot of times it's easier to go out and get a new client rather than going out and finding new talent. So there needs to be a personality fit. There are always going to be clients who have unrealistic expectations, and no matter what you do, it's never going to be enough. You need to be able to recognize that and either find a way to manage those expectations, which is not easy, or make a decision to part ways. And then also, it's a tendency of a lot of new companies, especially in the service space, to take on clients who are not the ideal client, whether it's because of product market fit or because of fee size, just because they want to get money coming in the door. And that works in the beginning, that might work the first 12 months, but it doesn't work long term when it's very difficult to build a sustainable business on small dollar clients or clients who just are not a good fit with your specific area of expertise. And there becomes a point in your growth cycle where you need to make that decision and start getting rid of some of those clients. And it's scary in the beginning, but it's kind of just one of those things where you need to take a leap of faith. And you may not have another client in the pipeline lined up to take that place, but once you make the decision, it's amazing how much easier life gets, and it becomes easier to continue growing the company.
How do you hire? Like, what do you look for when you're hiring for your company?
For us, we look for personality fits, the number one thing. You can teach a lot of things, but we can't teach heart. So you have to have heart for it. They have to really want to do it. They have to want to be there. They have to enjoy doing, what that role is. And then we look at, what's your background, what's your experience. We do tend to look at, we're in PR, so we pitch journalists all day long. And we do like hiring people who have a background in journalism because they understand how reporters think. They understand how producers think. So that's a specific skill set to our industry that makes you more valuable. But more important than all of those things, honestly, it's about personality and finding that right fit. There's a lot of other things you can teach. Yeah.
So on the PR side, how do you, as a startup, what's some advice that you can give a startup company and try and get their brand or their product out there?
I always say keep it simple in the beginning. If you can limit your offering to one product or one service in the beginning, that's a very good idea, not just for marketing, but also for financial reasons, for a lot of different reasons. So try to keep it simple, limit yourself to one product, become the best at delivering that one product, and know what separates you from everybody else. For example, we're in PR, and this is New York City, so there's a PR agency on every single block. We know what we do better than anybody else, and we stick to those specific areas. That's why when I started the company, we narrowed down our offering to just media. That's why later on we narrowed down our clientele to just B2B in tech, finance, and policy. So know who you are, be very clear on it, know who your customer is, be very clear on that, and try to sell just one thing to one person for as long as you can. And it might look like you're leaving money on the table in the beginning, but in the long term, you're actually going to make a lot more money, you're going to grow faster, and it just becomes a heck of a lot easier for managing and building a team.
And so when you said you look for heart,
Yep.
now personality, right?
Yep.
Like how it fits in.
Yep.
What else? Like, is there grit? Do you need like any other? Like,
Sure. For us, we're in a stressful industry. You need to be able to handle stress, high pressure environments. Obviously you need to be a team player. It's very cliche, but especially in New York, there's a lot of strong personalities here. You need to be able to play well on a team. But we look for people that can handle high pressure environments, people that are self-starters, people that kind of don't need to have their hand held through the step-by-step. And if you can find all of those things in one person, you're a very good recruiter, because a lot of times you're not going to find somebody who meets all of those things, but you kind of figure out, based on the role you're hiring for, who has enough of the qualities that you're looking for, and then you develop that person along the way. Yeah.
So I narrowed down my product. I know my market.
Yep.
How do I go out and pitch this? I create a pitch deck.
Mm-hmm.
And how do I get to the journalists? How
Yep.
do I find them? Where are they?
Yep.
Why are they going to listen to me? They get 1,000
Yep.
emails a day.
Yep. Well, you need two things. You need a good pitch, which we talked about. You need a very good pitch, and then you need to be pitching the right people. So start going online and researching the outlets that cover your space. If you're in finance, start reading. You should be reading CNBC. If you're in tech, look at TechCrunch. But look at the specific reporters who are covering your space, and you'll see names that tend to pop up again and again. Like this particular person covers this specific area of AI. Start following their work. Start connecting with them on social media. Connect with them on LinkedIn. That's a good way to get their contact information. And then start reaching out. Tell them what you're doing. Send them a pitch. I would say that, don't hesitate with just starting to send out pitches and building relationships. You don't need to wait until the product is perfect or the business until you have $5 million in revenue. Just start sending out a pitch. Start building relationships, because PR, like sales, a lot of times is a numbers game. It's about repetition. And you're going to need to pitch consistently for a period of time before you actually start getting into TechCrunch or getting into CNBC. So just start researching, learning about reporters, know everybody who covers your space, practice writing pitches, and then just start sending out the pitches. It's a sales process. But don't mass email. Try to make an individualized pitch for every person. Otherwise, you'll get blocked very quickly.
Don't be CC.
Yeah, because they do get a lot of pitches. Reporters get hundreds of pitches per day, and you can stand out by being somebody who sends a personalized pitch that brings value. rather than just writing a press release that's 1,000 words long and blasting it out to 1,000 different people. That's the kind of stuff that you don't want to do.
What about like a video clip of me actually speaking to the journalist? Like a link in there saying, hey, I understand this is like 30 seconds. I appreciate your time. I just want to talk about my product. This is what I'm doing. If you're interested, I'd love to discuss further. Was that also?
That's something that we've started doing with our clients, and it does work well. It gets a higher response rate for sure, because it's more personalized. Even though it's a little bit more time consuming to create, if you have, let's say, 10 reporters who are perfectly matched for your niche, it definitely wouldn't hurt to create a video, put it on YouTube unlisted, embed a link in your pitch. Don't send attachments. Most reporters don't open up attachments. Right. But embed a link in your pitch and send it out. It will definitely separate you from everybody else who's just emailing out PR web press releases. Yeah.
So you're also on the policy side, right?
Yeah.
Let's talk about entrepreneurship and policies. Like,
sure.
What's going on, domestically, globally, wherever you want to pick up. Because sometimes as an entrepreneur, we don't really know what's going on. We don't know how policies are affecting us.
Yeah.
Until it affected us.
Yeah.
So, would you like to talk about that?
Sure. So we do a lot of policy work advising NGOs and governments and politicians on media, but we're also very active in advocating for foreign policy that's more friendly towards entrepreneurs, especially youth entrepreneurs. One of the great things, and this is particularly true in the US, but it's also global, about the time that we live in now is that there are so many opportunities for young people that want to start a company, kind of like what I did, but also it's even easier now than it was 12, 15 years ago, because of technology, because of access to education and information. Through YouTube and through Google, we have more access to information today than the President of the United States did 30, 40 years ago. And a lot of times kids are using it to watch cat videos, but they could be using it to learn how to code, or how to learn marketing or advertising or AI, whatever it might be. So just trying to create more awareness around the fact that this tool is there, and young people can be using it to be able to learn a new skill and monetize that skill, especially today where you can monetize almost any skill thanks to social media, thanks to content marketing. So creating more awareness around that is a big focus for us, because the access to information is there, and a lot of people in the US and especially around the world are underutilizing that. There's also more access to markets, because you can sell. Nowadays, we're not just competing with firms in New York, we're competing with firms in LA, but also in Kosovo or Singapore and Tokyo. And you never know which one of those companies is being run by a 15-year-old kid in his parents' house.
Yeah.
So just trying.
It's like you coming back at you.
I know it's all coming. It all goes full circle. Trust me, we've run into it. So just bringing more awareness to the fact that access is there, and how people can use it. And on a global scale, there's also a lot of issues around culture and around mindset, especially in Europe. Not to pick on Europe, but it's difficult to start a business in Europe because of the culture and the mindset. Even if you're 40, it's difficult to start a business, because
why
there's a lot of there's a lack of trust in new companies. It's very difficult to get customers to do business with you. It's very difficult to obtain the funding a lot of times, both on the debt side and on the equity side. There's less lending because banks don't trust new businesses, and there's less equity in investing just because the ecosystem outside of the US for VC is smaller. So I've spent a lot of time visiting European countries. We work with different governments in the EU, trying to figure out how to break down the barriers around that mindset so that people are more accepting of entrepreneurs, startups, especially younger entrepreneurs, to encourage them to take risks, encourage them with the fact that if you fail starting a company, which is something we're very good at in America, is if we fail, we're very good at starting another company. You go out, you start another company. But in Europe, there's a lot of stigma associated with it, and there's also a lot of financial repercussions and recourse associated with having a company that goes bankrupt. Also in Asia and different parts of the world. So just trying to change some of the policy around that, but also some of the culture around it as well to create a better environment fostering entrepreneurship.
Is there anything that you want to leave these founders today, any information that you want to share with them, philosophies, thoughts, books?
Yeah, I would say, first, again, to repeat, I would say, start a business where you can sell one thing to one person for as long as you can. Number two would be build a team before you think you need to build a team. A lot of companies, myself included, wait too long to build the team. And then you get to a point where you're so overwhelmed and you're so under-resourced that you hit this wall. And once you hit that wall, it's in some ways it's too late to start building the team because you're going to start losing momentum with the business that you already have. So start building a team before you think you need one. Simplify your model, and just read. Just don't stop reading. Honestly, because when I started at 15, I went to the library and checked out every single book that they had about marketing and about management, law, everything. And now I read with this podcast, and now you have YouTube. So just keep consuming as much information as you can get. You never know what book or podcast or video is going to lead to either, number one, your next idea, or somebody that you can reach out to for business. So just always keep consuming that information. Always keep learning.
Do you know Gary Vee?
Yeah.
So walking over here, I saw him at a coffee shop down the street. He was actually meeting an entrepreneur that reached out to him to talk about what they were doing. Is there a book or a podcast that you would recommend, or?
We mentioned The One Thing by Gary Keller. I would definitely read that. I would read The Compound Effect by Darren Hardy. It's a book about productivity. I read that when I was 20. That was really big for me with figuring out how to better manage my time. I never realized how much time I was wasting, I would say, until I read that book, and it really helped me optimize my life to scale my company faster. But beyond that, I would say The Hard Thing About Hard Things
Ben Horowitz,
by Horowitz is a great book. Start with those, and there's just so many great books out there. Look at people that you want to model your life after, and whether they write a blog, whether they have social media, whether they've written a book, just start following their content. Go see them speak, go to conferences, and just see where that leads you, because you really never know what kind of opportunity or relationship it's going to lead to.
Awesome. All right, we're going to open it up to questions. If anybody has, just please raise your hand. Any questions out there? No? All right. Yes?
What would you recommend to your younger self?
There's a lot of things I could say, but I would say overall, be more patient. Because I was, like most founders, very type A kind of intense personality, always wanting to get to the goal as fast as possible, and it can take a wear on your mental health. So I would say be patient, do the right things every single day consistently, do all the small things, and then don't worry so much about whether it's coming into place in the bigger picture. So I think that would be a pretty good piece of advice. Yeah.
Question?
Looking at the current influencers that are influencing PR and marketing, how do you look at the next phase of where that's going?
That's a good question. So obviously over the past 10 years, PR has become a lot more digital, and there's been a lot of good things that have come with that because it's become a lot more trackable versus using a magazine or TV where it's very difficult to track quantify leads and traffic and all that stuff. Through marketing automation and digital PR and analytics, we're able to track a lot more. So that's something that's been good up until now. But at the same time, it's becoming a little bit of a double-edged sword because there's a lot of things in the digital landscape right now that are posing a lot of threats to PR and to marketing and honestly information as a whole. I would say deep fake videos are a big threat and a big problem that we think are one of the biggest problems for 2020.
What is that? Not everybody knows what that is.
a deep fake video it's basically a doctored video. So what happens is you can take a video of Barack Obama, and you can digitally alter the video to make it look like the subject of the video might be saying something that they never said. And if you Google it, there's a lot. Obama does have a deep fake that's out there. Elizabeth Warren does have a deep fake that's out there. So you can Google it and see, but it's a doctored video that looks very real, that looks like that person, a public figure, saying something that's usually false, inflammatory, what have you. And we're seeing that technology become more and more advanced. So it's becoming more difficult to determine whether a video you see of Obama or of Trump on the internet is actually real. And it's dangerous. It's dangerous to journalism and to press because it just leads to more fake news. It's destructive to democracies. It can interfere with elections. So that's a huge issue that we haven't figured out really how to fully combat yet. But especially going into an election year, it's going to be a big problem for people who work in communications and in marketing, and just societies as a whole, governments. Yeah.
Looking back, I'm sure your growth wasn't necessarily a straight line. Is there anything that you did that you can think back that really enabled you to go through like an inflection point, really accelerate?
Yeah.
Faster than you would have been right before that?
Yeah, spending more time working on myself rather than working on the company, which is another kind of cliche thing. Honestly, that was when I was about 20 when I started spending more time optimizing my own habits, my own productivity. That changed everything. The company started to scale much faster, and it was like a hockey stick. And it was because, number one, I wasn't using my time in the most effective ways, and I also was letting a lot of those habits of founders that we talked about before, like the lack of focus and the shiny object syndrome, I was letting a lot of those things run my life, and it was actually hurting the business more than growing it. So once I was able to implement better routines, better habits, and better control my own mindset and mentality, it led to better results for the company. So again, Compound Effect by Darren Hardy was one of the books that I read during that time that really had a big impact. And that, I would say, more than any work we've done on the company, has made a really big difference in our own growth. Because at the end of the day, a company is about the leadership behind it. And spending time developing that team and developing yourself, leading yourself, is one of the best investments that you can make.
Yeah, and to add to that, a lot of times we say you've got to show up. You got to show up every day.
Yep.
But if you show up and you're not ready to show up, you're not ready for the practice of being that entrepreneur that day, what's the point, right? You're not 100%.
Yep. Take care of yourself.
Take care of yourself. You got to sleep.
It's tough building a company. It's
is.
tough. Mental health. Now we're starting to learn a lot of this stuff, over the past few years about mental health and how it affects entrepreneurs. But it's really stressful building a company, no matter what age you are, what background you come from. It's difficult. So you take care of yourself. That's more important than the company. Well, we had two over here, I think.
Here.
I wanted to know, did you, because I wasn't here in the beginning, did you go 100% into your company, or did you do it on the side and then have like a part-time job and just kind of?
So I was in high school when I started the company. So I went 100% into it, only because nobody else would hire me. But what I would say is that there's like this prevailing mindset out there that you have to go all in, burn the ships, burn the bridges. I'm not really a big believer in that. It's especially today with technology allowing us to build companies remotely, to be more productive in less time. I think it's a very good idea to spend some time working, whether it's in your industry to get the experience and the relationships, or just working to get funding so that you're not starving while you're building this company. I do think it's a good idea to do that. And you have to figure out what your own risk tolerance is, and your personality. But overall, I think there's nothing wrong with working a company 9 to 5, working somewhere, and then starting your company at night on the weekends.
Good question.
First of all, thank you for being here. I think this is phenomenal.
Thank you.
A lot already. Secondly, I want to compliment you on closing your first 6-figure deal when you were 16 years old.
Yeah.
correct?
Yeah.
I think I was learning how
That
to
was fun.
It was
Yeah, it was
online.
fun.
It was
I was
through
online
email.
and you
Through
never
email.
met the
Yeah.
person you closed a six-figure deal with.
Yep.
I was learning how to drive.
And I met the client for the first time in person when I was 20, and she was like, "Let me buy you a drink," and I was like, "Well, there's a problem with that." And so it was fun, but yeah, thank you.
That's awesome.
Appreciate it.
I actually do have a question. So it just made me really think about what you said later on in your interview about your sales pitch. You said three things. So basically focusing on the co-founders, on the impact you have on society, and the last but not least, this is a specific case study on maybe a successful
Yep.
client, right? So for some
Yep.
of us who are co-founders or just starting out, who don't have that case study yet, and I'm just kind of bringing back a 16-year-old you doing this,
Yep.
reaching out to as many people as possible. I'm sure you were patient, you were in it 100%. I'm just trying to think, if we don't have that first client, how do we really pitch what our value is to people that have never seen us, to everyone out there?
Focus on the story behind the company then. Talk about, whether it's your journey as a founder starting it or, something unique about the culture of the company or what you guys do or a problem that you solve. But focus on the story of the company itself and personalize it. And that's the best way to go about doing it in the beginning when you don't have those case studies. When I was 15 or maybe 16, I did my first press interview about myself. And the way that I got that interview, it was a story in the Long Island Business News. If anyone Googles it, it's still out there, I think. I wrote up a pitch about myself being 15 years old, starting my company, and I faxed it, to 4 or 5 different local newspapers on Long Island. And it was a 2 or 3 paragraph pitch, and it was probably terribly written. I wouldn't even go back and read it. But just talking about, I'm 15 years old, I'm building this company. I probably wrote it in third person. This way they wouldn't know that I was the one writing it. But, just about being 15 years old, starting this company. So focus on, your personal story as a founder. Every founder has some kind of unique experience that they've gone through, building the company or getting to the point where they can build the company, and use that in the beginning to get some momentum.
2 more questions.
And how do you go about gauging when you should be gathering a team around you? You said that
Yep.
you did it a little late.
Yep.
But what metric would you use in order to, okay, now it's time to build a team? Is it a dollar amount or is it
It's a good question.
workflow?
Yeah, so cohesion, I would say, it's like I said, when you're recruiting, a lot of it comes down to you choosing the right personality fits in the beginning. We see so many companies, and this is especially true when hiring for sales roles. Companies go out and hire salespeople that are absolute rock stars, that they kill it, but they're just honestly jerks. And they're not team players, and they're difficult people to get along with. And it slowly contaminates the culture among the entire sales team. And they're left wondering, why is the culture on our team so bad? Why is there no cohesiveness? So being very cognizant of that in the beginning and choosing those right personality fits and weeding them out when you make a hire and realize that the fit's not there. That's number 1. Number 2, I would say, look at how you can build a system and a routine around building team culture. Whether it's getting everybody together every Monday for a standing meeting and having something fun that you guys do to start off the meeting, or doing quarterly retreats or workshops. Look at how you can get people together, how you can get them to really build relationships on a personal level and make it not always just about the work, the clients, but look at how you can always build those personal relationships. You want everybody ultimately, what you're going for is you want people to be friends ideally and like each other. And the way that you do that is by choosing the right personalities and then getting them together often to spend personal quality time together. So when do you build a team? It's really hard. I would say it's probably different for a lot of different companies depending on what space you're in. But for me, I would say, it's as soon as you get to a point where you can't spend, and this is very early stage, if you can't spend 50% of your time as a founder on either management or sales, which is what grows a company, because you're spending that time instead on product dev or serving clients or administrative work, which is the worst, then you're at a point where this is no longer sustainable. Because if you can't spend 50% of your time doing those things, that drive the meter, you're probably not going to be growing for too much longer. So that would be one rule of thumb I would look at. Financially, as soon as you can do it, even if it means making some cuts to your own personal pay or something else, that you might need to make a cut to, the sooner you can make that investment, you're going to start seeing the dollar return on it quickly. So it's one of the best investments that you can make as soon as the capital is freed up. Just don't raise tons of money to hire 150 people on day one, and then not be able to support the burn rate. Other than that, look at how you can start getting things off your plate as a CEO as soon as possible.
One more question, all the way in the back.
Hi, I'm sorry I joined a little late. I do team building creative entrepreneurs, and basically work in the team building arena. And I want to understand, this seems like a really good platform for finding new business development for my company, but what other platforms are there that you know around investing and finding?
So platforms for finding talent.
No, for finding, for sales, marketing, or bringing in more business.
Oh, for bringing in more business. One of the best things for us, because we're a service business, we're in B2B, has been joining organizations, whether it's, Jimmy and I are both part of an organization called the Young Entrepreneur Council, which is, they have about 1,500 members. They get together for events and retreats. We have an online forum where we kind of help each other out. Looking for groups like that, Young Presidents Organization, EO, Entrepreneur Organization, looking for more associations that you can get involved in, where you'll meet both mentors and other possible partners, clients, team members, etc. That's honestly still the best way to do it. There are platforms, I'm sure that you can, we recruit off of LinkedIn and we run ads and all these different things, but honestly the personal relationships that we build face-to-face in these organizations, like PRSA and our industry, those are still the best resources that we found for connecting with the right people.
All right,
Sure.
everyone, Richard Lorenzen.
Thank you.